Hi, welcome back to Hack Heart. Our new story is ready. Enjoy watching.
The moment that old watchmaker's face went pale, I knew something was terribly wrong. He grabbed my wrist with trembling hands and said words that still echo in my nightmares. "Take this off, right now. Don't ask questions." When he showed me what was hidden inside that beautiful silver necklace, the one my own son Bradley placed around my neck 6 months ago on Mother's Day, my heart stopped because I finally understood why I'd been slowly dying, and I finally understood who wanted me dead. My name is Sierra Hooper. I'm 36 years old, and 6 months ago I thought I had a pretty good life. Not perfect, no life ever is, but good, solid. The kind of life you build when you start from nothing and work your way up through sheer stubbornness. I became a mother at 18, scared, alone, with a boy growing inside me and a future that looked like a brick wall. But I figured it out. I married Patrick when I was 19, and together we built something real. He worked construction. I put myself through night school for accounting. We bought a little house in Connecticut, raised our son Bradley, and somewhere along the way we stopped surviving and started living. Then 3 years ago, Patrick had a heart attack. Just like that. One morning he was complaining about heartburn, and by noon he was gone. 41 years old. The doctors said it was a congenital defect nobody knew about. His heart just stopped. He left me comfortable, I'll say that. Life insurance, savings, a house that was paid off, about $1.2 million total. Not rich, but secure. Enough that I could work part-time, tend my garden, and focus on being there for Bradley. Bradley, my boy, my whole world. He was 15 when his father died, and I watched him grow up fast after that. Too fast, maybe. By 16, he'd gotten a part-time job at a local cafe, insisted on helping with bills even though I told him to save his money. I was so proud of him, so proud of the man he was becoming. That's where he met her, Vivian Prescott. She was 25 when they started dating. My son was 16. I remember the first time he brought her home, this beautiful woman with perfect hair and a smile that could sell ice to penguins. She was charming, sophisticated. She laughed at all my jokes and complimented my cooking and told me what a wonderful job I'd done raising Bradley. And something in my gut screamed wrong, but I pushed it down. I told myself I was being overprotective, that I was jealous of losing my son to another woman. That's normal, right? Every mother feels that. My sister Nadine didn't push it down. Nadine is 8 years older than me, and she's never learned the art of keeping her opinions to herself. God bless her for it. That woman is a predator, Nadine told me flat out. A 25-year-old sniffing around a teenage boy? She's not in love with him, Sierra. She's hunting him. I defended Vivian. I said Nadine was being paranoid. We argued. Nadine said she'd keep her mouth shut from now on, but her eyes told me she was just waiting, watching. 18 months ago, Bradley turned 17 and begged me to let him marry Vivian. In our state, you can marry at 17 with parental consent. He was so in love, so certain, and Vivian was so perfect, so patient, sitting in my living room explaining that she understood my concerns, that she'd had a difficult past, and Bradley made her feel safe. That age was just a number when two souls connected. I should have said no. I should have put my foot down and made him wait, but I was terrified of losing him. If I forbade the marriage, would he cut me out of his life? Would I push him further into her arms? So I signed the papers. I gave my blessing. I smiled at their wedding and told myself I was being a good mother. Nadine came to the wedding. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. For the first year, things seemed fine. Vivian was attentive, Bradley was happy, and I started to believe maybe I'd been wrong about her. Maybe Nadine had been wrong. Maybe love really doesn't care about age differences. Then came Mother's Day, 6 months ago. Bradley showed up at my door that morning with tears in his eyes and a velvet box in his hands. Inside was the most beautiful necklace I'd ever seen, silver, antique-looking, with an ornate oval pendant that caught the light like captured moonlight. "Vivian helped me pick it out," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It was her grandmother's. She wanted you to have it. She said you're the mother she never had." I cried. I actually cried. Here I'd spent 18 months suspicious of this woman, and she was giving me a family heirloom. I felt ashamed of every doubt I'd ever had. I put the necklace on right there, and I didn't take it off. Not that day, not that night, not for the next 6 months. I wore it in the shower, wore it to bed, wore it every single moment like a talisman of acceptance, like proof that I was loved. Within 2 weeks, I started feeling strange. It began with morning nausea. I'd wake up feeling like I'd been spinning in circles all night. Then came the headaches, dull, persistent, drilling into the space behind my eyes. Then the fatigue, bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of sleep could touch. I went to my doctor. She ran blood tests. Everything normal. She referred me to a specialist who ran more tests. MRI, clear. Heart workup, perfect. Thyroid, fine. The specialist looked at me with that particular expression doctors get when they're out of ideas and said, "Have you considered that it might be stress? Anxiety? You've been through a lot." 3 specialists, 12 blood tests, and the best they could offer was, "Have you tried yoga?" Honey, I could barely lift my head off the pillow, and they wanted me to do downward dog. I started keeping a journal of my symptoms. The nausea was always worst in the morning, right after I woke up. After sleeping 8 hours with the necklace pressed against my chest, I wrote it down but didn't connect it. Why would I? It was just a necklace, a gift from my son. Nadine noticed I was getting worse. She came for her weekly visit and couldn't hide her shock at how gray I looked, how thin I'd become. "You wear that thing even to bed?" she asked, nodding at the necklace. "It was a gift from Bradley," I said, more defensive than I meant to. "It was picked by his wife. There's a difference." We argued, again. She left hurt, and I spent the rest of the night crying and clutching the pendant against my heart. My son went from calling me 3 times a day, "Mom, how do I do laundry? Mom, can you freeze cheese?" to barely returning my texts. Now I was lucky to get a thumbs-up emoji. Marriage doesn't just change men. It apparently gives them amnesia about their mother's phone number. But I had no idea how deep the betrayal went. Not yet. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single comment and it means the world to me. Thank you so much for being here. 3 months into wearing that necklace, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. I'd lost 18 pounds, not through any diet. I simply couldn't keep food down. My clothes hung off my frame like I was borrowing someone else's wardrobe. My thick brown hair, the hair Patrick used to run his fingers through and call my crowning glory, started coming out in clumps. I'd brush it in the morning and stare at the hairbrush like it had betrayed me. Some mornings, my hands trembled so badly I couldn't hold a coffee cup. I'd switch to mugs with handles I could grip with both hands, and even then I sometimes spilled. My doctor added essential tremor to my growing list of mysterious symptoms and suggested I reduce my caffeine intake. I looked in the mirror and saw a ghost, hollow cheeks, dull eyes, skin that had lost its warmth. I was 36 years old and I looked 50. I felt 80, but I kept wearing that necklace every single day. Taking it off felt like rejecting my son, like admitting Nadine was right, like giving up on the only proof I had that Vivian accepted me. Around this time, Vivian started visiting more often. She'd show up 2-3 times a week with containers of food. "I made you some soup, Sierra. You need to keep your strength up." I blended this smoothie with turmeric and ginger. It's supposed to help with nausea. I found this herbal tea that's wonderful for energy. She was so attentive, so caring. The perfect daughter-in-law checking on her sick mother-in-law, bringing homemade remedies and worried smiles. Part of me was touched. Part of me wanted to believe this was real. Vivian brought me something called a detox smoothie once. It was green, it was thick, and it tasted like someone had blended a lawn with good intentions. I smiled and said it was delicious. I lied. I've told smaller lies on my tax returns. But then the suggestions started. You know, managing finances while you're unwell must be so stressful, Vivian said one afternoon, her voice dripping with concern. Have you thought about simplifying things? Maybe adding someone to your accounts, just in case something happens? My accountant brain, foggy as it was, sent up a warning flare. I'm fine managing my accounts, I said. Of course you are. I just worry about you, that's all. A week later, she suggested I meet with a financial advisor. A family friend, she called him. Very trustworthy. He helped my aunt restructure her portfolio, and she's so much more secure now. His name was Gilbert Stowe. Late 20s, expensive suit, smile that was about 10% too wide. He came to my house because I was too weak to travel, and he spread charts and graphs across my kitchen table like he was performing surgery. He pushed aggressive strategies, liquidating my mutual funds, moving money into high-yield opportunities that he couldn't quite explain in plain English. Every time I asked a specific question, he pivoted to another topic. I've been doing accounting for 15 years. I know a predatory pitch when I hear one. I'll think about it, I said, which is polite Southern woman for absolutely not. Gilbert's smile flickered, just for a second. Later that week, Vivian's reaction was even more telling. Her voice on the phone was sweet as always, but there was an edge underneath. Gilbert is very respected in his field. I thought you'd trust my judgment. That wasn't disappointment in her voice. That was anger. Controlled, carefully hidden anger. I should have paid more attention, but I was so tired, so sick, so desperate to believe that my family actually cared about me. Then came the weekend that changed everything, sort of. My college roommate Patty invited me to visit her in Vermont. I almost canceled. I felt too sick to travel, too exhausted to be good company. But Nadine practically shoved me into the car. Fresh air will help. Mountains, trees. Get away from everything for a few days. I packed quickly, throwing clothes into a bag without much thought. I was halfway to Vermont before I realized I'd forgotten the necklace. It was sitting on my nightstand where I'd set it down while changing shirts. For a moment, I considered turning back. The necklace was my connection to Bradley, my proof that Vivian accepted me. But I was already an hour into the drive, and I was so tired. Day 1 in Vermont, still nauseous, still weak. I apologized to Patty for being such poor company. Day 2, slightly better. I managed to eat half a sandwich without feeling sick. Day 3, I woke up feeling almost normal. The nausea was gone. My hands were steady. I had energy, actual energy. Steve, for the first time in months, I ate a full breakfast. Eggs, toast, bacon, the works, and I kept it down. Mountain air, I told Patty. I needed this. I drove home Sunday night feeling better than I had in ages. I walked into my bedroom, saw the necklace on the nightstand, and immediately put it back on. I'd missed it, missed the weight of it against my chest. Monday morning, I woke up vomiting. The nausea had returned with a vengeance. By Tuesday, the headache was back. By Wednesday, my hands were shaking again. I still didn't connect it. Why would I? It was just a necklace. Meanwhile, I kept trying to reach Bradley. My calls went to voicemail. My texts got one-word responses hours later. When we did talk, Vivian was always there in the background and Bradley's voice sounded rehearsed, distant. "Mom, you're being paranoid," he said when I asked why he never visited alone. "Vivian loves you. She's there all the time." That's exactly my point, I wanted to say. Why is she there all the time? Why does a 27-year-old woman spend more time with her sick mother-in-law than with friends her own age? But I didn't say it. I was too tired to fight. Nadine wasn't too tired. She came for her weekly visit and gasped when she saw me. Actually gasped. "Sierra, this isn't normal. You look worse every time I see you. Something is seriously wrong. The doctors can't find anything." Then the doctors aren't looking in the right place. She begged me to see another specialist, to take a break from Vivian's visits, to just stop and think about when this all started. I got defensive. I always got defensive when Nadine mentioned Vivian. She's been nothing but helpful. She's here every day bringing me food. That's exactly what worries me. Nadine's voice rose. What kind of 27-year-old spends all her time with her sick mother-in-law? She should be building her own life. She should be working, making friends, doing something. Instead, she's here every day watching you waste away. She cares about me. She cares about something, Nadine said darkly. But it's not you. The argument turned ugly. Words were said that couldn't be unsaid. At some point, Nadine threw up her hands and headed for the door. "You were so smart at 18, she said, her hand on the doorknob. "Raising Bradley alone, putting yourself through school, building a life from nothing. What happened to that woman? Wake up, Sierra! Get out!" She went, but at the threshold she turned back one last time. "Something is very wrong here, and it's not your health. It's that woman, that necklace, all of it. Something is wrong, and I pray to God you figure it out before it kills you." I slammed the door behind her. That night, I cried myself to sleep, clutching the pendant my son had given me, the pendant that was slowly stealing my life. 2 weeks after my fight with Nadine, the guilt was eating me alive. We'd never gone this long without speaking. Through everything. My teen pregnancy, Patrick's death, every crisis, big and small. Nadine had been there, and I'd thrown her out of my house for telling me the truth I didn't want to hear. Her birthday was coming up. I needed to make things right. Despite feeling like death warmed over, I forced myself to get dressed and drive downtown. Nadine had always loved vintage jewelry, real antiques, pieces with history. I'd find her something beautiful, show up at her door with a gift and an apology, and we'd heal this rift between us. That's how I ended up at Whitmore's Antiques and Curiosities. I'd passed the shop 100 times over the years, but never gone in. It was one of those places that looked like it had been there since the town was founded. Dusty windows, faded awning, hand-painted sign that was more charm than advertisement. A bell chimed when I pushed open the door. The smell hit me first. Old wood, furniture polish, and that particular scent of aged paper and memories. Display cases lined the walls, filled with watches, jewelry, silverware, and curiosities I couldn't even name. "Be right with you," called a voice from the back. An elderly man emerged from behind a curtain. He was at least 75, maybe 80, with silver hair and kind eyes behind thick glasses. He moved slowly but steadily, wiping his hands on a cloth. "My son runs the shop now," he said by way of introduction. "But he's out on an appraisal. I'm Clement. Can I help you find something?" I explained I was looking for vintage jewelry for my sister's birthday. He nodded and gestured toward a display case in the corner. "Victorian pieces are over there, Art Deco in the middle. If you're looking for something truly special, I have some estate pieces in the back that just came in." I browsed for a while, occasionally touching my own necklace out of habit. The weight of it had become so familiar that I didn't even notice anymore. It was just part of me. But Clement noticed. "That's an interesting piece you're wearing," he said, his eyes on my pendant. "May I see it?" I unclasped the necklace and handed it over without thinking. Clement carried it to the counter and pulled out a jeweler's loupe, one of those magnifying glasses that lets you see every tiny detail. He examined the pendant slowly, turning it this way and that under the light. I watched his expression change, first curiosity, then confusion, then something darker. He set down the loupe very slowly, looked at me with an intensity that made my stomach flip. "How long have you been wearing this?" "6 months. Every day. It was a gift from my son." Clement's jaw tightened. "Take off any other jewelry you're wearing, and don't touch this pendant anymore." "What? Why?" "Just trust me. Please." 50 years in the jewelry trade, he told me as he led me to his workbench in the back. Started as an apprentice watchmaker at 17. Spent 15 years as a quality inspector for a major jewelry manufacturer, catching counterfeits and identifying dangerous materials. Seen things that would curl my hair. "This pendant," he said, pointing with a tool instead of his finger, "has a hidden compartment." My blood chilled. "A what?" He showed me a seam so tiny it was invisible to the naked eye. Even under his magnifying glass, I could barely see it. "Modern work," Clement said. "Disguised to look antique. Clever craftsmanship, I'll give them that. But I've seen tricks like this before." He used specialized tools to open a microscopic hatch in the pendant's base. Inside was a small cavity, and in that cavity sat a tiny porous capsule containing a grayish powder. "What is that?" My voice came out as a whisper. "I don't know exactly. I'm not a chemist." Clement's face was grim. "But I know it's not supposed to be there, and I know these capsules are designed for slow release. Body heat activates them. The closer to skin, the more exposure." I thought about how I wore this necklace against my bare skin, 16 hours a day, in bed at night, pressed between my chest and the mattress as I slept. "In my inspection days," Clement continued, "we found counterfeit jewelry containing toxic materials, lead, cadmium, worse. But those were accidents, cheap manufacturers using dangerous shortcuts." He looked at me with something like pity. "This isn't an accident. This compartment was built deliberately. Someone put this substance here on purpose." My mind raced through 6 months of symptoms. The nausea that started 2 weeks after I began wearing the necklace, the hair loss, the tremors, the fatigue so deep I felt like I was drowning in it. The weekend in Vermont without the necklace, feeling better, coming home, putting it back on, getting sick again. My hands started shaking, not from poison this time, but from the dawning horror of understanding. "This necklace," I said slowly. "Vivian told Bradley to give it to me. She said it was her grandmother's. 50 years I've looked at jewelry," Clement said, his voice dry as dust. "Seen fakes, seen frauds, seen things that would make your hair curl. But this is a first. Someone spent good money making something beautiful that could kill you. At least most poisoners have the decency to be cheap about it." I would have laughed if I wasn't fighting the urge to scream. "You need to get this tested at a laboratory," Clement said firmly. "Today, and you need to find out exactly what's in that capsule. Do you have someone you trust? Someone who isn't connected to whoever gave you this?" I thought of Nadine, the sister I'd pushed away, the sister who'd tried to warn me for 2 years. "Yes," I whispered, "I have someone." I drove to Nadine's house in a daze, the necklace sealed in a plastic bag on my passenger seat like a venomous snake. Tears streamed down my face, but I barely noticed. My brain was processing what my heart couldn't accept. Vivian had given me this necklace. Vivian had been watching me get sicker and sicker. Vivian had been bringing me food, checking on me, playing the concerned daughter-in-law, while I was dying from a poison she'd hung around my neck. I pounded on Nadine's door until my fists hurt. She opened it ready to argue, saw my face, and every trace of anger melted away. "Sierra, what happened? What's wrong?" "I'm sorry," I sobbed. "I'm so sorry. You were right. You were right about everything." Inside, I showed her the necklace, told her what Clement had found, watched her face cycle through shock, horror, and finally a cold, hard fury I'd never seen before. "I'm gonna kill her," Nadine said flatly. "No, we need proof first." "You're the proof. You've been poisoned for 6 months. We need to know what's in that capsule. We need evidence that can't be denied." I grabbed her hands. "Please, Nadine, help me do this right." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I know a private laboratory. Friend of mine from my hospital days. She runs toxicology testing. We can have results in 48 hours. We sealed the necklace in a fresh evidence bag, drove to the lab, and handed it over with instructions to test every substance in that hidden compartment. Then we went back to Nadine's house and waited. 2 days. 48 hours of drinking tea and pacing and jumping every time the phone rang. My daughter-in-law gave me a necklace that's slowly killing me, and here I thought the worst gift I'd ever gotten was a vacuum cleaner from my ex-boyfriend. At least that one only sucked metaphorically. Nadine didn't laugh at my joke, neither did I. When the call finally came, I answered with shaking hands. The substance in the capsule was thallium sulfate. Thallium. A colorless, odorless poison that's been the weapon of choice for murderers since the 19th century. It attacks the nervous system, the gastrointestinal tract, the hair follicles. In small doses over time, it mimics a dozen other illnesses. Doctors never think to test for it because poisoning is the last thing they expect. Every symptom I'd had was textbook thallium poisoning. At my rate of exposure, the lab tech told me, another 6 to 8 months would have caused permanent organ damage. A year would probably have killed me. I sat in my sister's kitchen, lab report in my hands, and for the first time in 6 months, I didn't cry. I was done crying. Now I was angry. If you're still with me, and I really hope you are, please take a second to subscribe to this channel. Every subscription helps me keep telling these stories. And if you're wondering what happens next, trust me, you don't want to miss this. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. The lab report changed everything. Thallium sulfate. 6 months of slow poisoning. A death sentence disguised as a family heirloom. I sat at Nadine's kitchen table staring at those words until they blurred. Part of me had hoped, prayed, that Clement was wrong. That the substance would turn out to be something harmless, some weird residue from manufacturing, anything other than what it was. But hope doesn't change chemistry. "We need to go to the police," Nadine said. "Right now, tonight, and tell them what? That my daughter-in-law gave me a poison necklace?" I shook my head. "Vivian will deny everything. She'll say I'm crazy, that the illness has affected my mind. She'll have Bradley defend her." "You have proof." Nadine jabbed her finger at the lab report. "I have proof that there's poison in the necklace. I don't have proof that Vivian put it there. I don't have proof she knew what was in it." I rubbed my temples. She's smart, Nadine. She's been planning this for months, maybe longer. If we go in half-cocked, she'll slip away. Nadine was quiet for a moment. Then she picked up her phone. I know someone, she said. Someone who can help us do this right. Detective Monica Reyes had grown up 3 houses down from Nadine and me. We'd played together as kids, lost touch as adults, and reconnected a few years ago at our mother's funeral. Monica had spent 25 years in law enforcement, the last 10 as a senior detective with the Connecticut State Police. She came to Nadine's house that night, off-duty in jeans and a worn sweater. She listened to everything without interrupting. The necklace, the symptoms, Clement's discovery, the lab results. When I finished, she sat back and let out a long breath. Attempted murder, she said quietly. First degree. Premeditated, methodical, designed to look like natural illness. She looked at me with something like respect. You're lucky to be alive, Sierra. I don't feel lucky. I feel stupid. Don't. Monica's voice was firm. Poisoners count on trust. They exploit love. That's not stupidity. That's being human. She pulled out a notebook. Now, let's talk about building a case. The investigation had to be quiet. If Vivian got wind that anyone suspected her, she'd destroy evidence, maybe even run. So I had to keep playing the sick, trusting mother-in-law. I had to let Vivian visit me, bring me her poison smoothies, pat my hand with fake concern. It was the hardest acting job of my life. Just a few more weeks, Monica promised. Let us do our work. The work was extensive. Monica's cyber unit traced the purchase of thallium sulfate. It had been bought through a shell company, paid for with cryptocurrency. Someone had tried very hard to cover their tracks, but criminals always make mistakes, and Vivian was no exception. The shell company's registration led to a P.O. box. The P.O. box led to an LLC, and that LLC was connected to an email address, vivianp2019@gmail.com. Vivian's college email, the one she'd probably forgotten she still had. The necklace itself was traced to an overseas jeweler who specialized in custom pieces with concealed compartments. His legitimate business was hiding emergency medication for people with severe allergies, a secret dose of epinephrine in a pendant, that sort of thing. But for the right price, he didn't ask questions about what went into those compartments. Vivian had found a darker use for his services, but Monica wanted more. Email records were good, but they could be disputed. She wanted Vivian on tape. She wanted her to incriminate herself. We need to give her an opportunity she can't resist, Monica said during one of our planning sessions, something that makes her drop her guard. I thought about Vivian's suggestions over the past months, the financial advisor, the power of attorney, her constant gentle pressure to simplify my finances. She wants my money, I said slowly. She's been trying to get access to my accounts for months. What if I finally say yes? Monica smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. That could work. But first, she had to tell me about Gilbert. Gilbert Stowe, the family friend financial advisor Vivian had pushed me to hire, was already under federal investigation. Multiple elderly clients had lost their life savings through his high-yield investment opportunities. The FBI had been building a case against him for 18 months. And his connection to Vivian, they dated for 3 years in college, supposedly broke up right before Vivian met Bradley, but phone records told a different story. They'd never stopped communicating. Hundreds of calls, thousands of texts. They weren't ex-lovers who'd stayed friends. They were partners. The plan crystallized in my mind like ice forming on a window. Vivian marries Bradley. Young, naive, easily manipulated. She isolates him from his mother, controls his communications. Meanwhile, she poisons Sierra slowly. The doctors never find anything because they're not looking for thallium. Sierra declines over months, a year, maybe 2. Eventually, she dies. Natural causes, tragic. Bradley inherits everything, but Bradley trusts Vivian completely. She controls the money. Gilbert helps her move the funds into accounts the police can't trace. They split the inheritance and disappear into the sunset. $1.2 million. That's what my life was worth to them. In 30 years of police work, Monica told me, she'd seen a lot of stupid criminals, but ordering poison through an email with your actual name in it? That's not criminal mastermind. That's criminal master idiot. I'd have laughed if I wasn't so furious. The FBI agreed to coordinate with Monica's investigation. Gilbert was already in their sights. Connecting him to an attempted murder would seal his fate. They'd let both investigations run together, spring the trap at the same time. But there was one more thing I needed to know. Bradley, I said to Monica, my son, was he part of this? Monica shook her head. We've been through his phone records, his emails, his bank accounts. There's no evidence he knew anything. In fact, she hesitated. Vivian was monitoring his communications, deleting texts from you before he could see them, filtering his emails. She isolated him systematically. My boy. My sweet, naive 18-year-old boy. He wasn't a conspirator. He was another victim. I called Vivian the next day. I've been thinking about what you said. I made my voice weak, tired, not hard since I was still recovering, about simplifying my finances. You were right. I'm too sick to manage everything myself. I could almost hear her trying not to purr with satisfaction. Oh, Sierra, I'm so glad you're finally seeing sense. I've been so worried about you. Can we meet? Maybe have a family dinner? Discuss everything properly. I want Bradley there too. Of course. I'll arrange everything. This Saturday. I hung up and looked at Monica. She took the bait. Monica nodded. Now we reel her in. Vivian spent 2 years pretending to love my son, I thought as I prepared for the performance of my life. 2 years of Bradley honey this and Bradley sweetie that. Her acting skills deserved an Oscar, or at least a prison cell with good lighting. Saturday evening. Vivian's house. She'd pulled out all the stops, candles on the dining table, fresh flowers in crystal vases, expensive wine breathing in a decanter. The house smelled like roasted chicken and rosemary and betrayal. A woman I didn't recognize sat in the corner with a leather folder on her lap. This is Patricia, Vivian said smoothly. She's a notary. I thought we'd make everything official tonight. Save you extra trips when you're feeling so unwell. I smiled weakly. That's so thoughtful. What Vivian didn't know, Patricia, was Officer Janet Moreno working undercover. The notary license was real. Monica had arranged that. But so was the badge hidden in her purse. Outside, unmarked cars idled on 3 different streets. Monica Reyes was parked 2 blocks away, listening to every word through the wire taped to my chest. Showtime. Nadine came with me despite my protests. You're not facing that snake alone, she'd said. And nothing could change her mind. So there we were, 2 sisters walking into the lion's den, one of us wired for sound. Vivian greeted us at the door with her warmest smile. Sierra, you look tired. Come sit down. I made your favorite, chicken soup. Even now, I marveled at her commitment to the role, playing the devoted daughter-in-law right up until the handcuffs clicked. Bradley hovered nervously in the kitchen doorway. He'd lost weight too, I noticed. Dark circles under his eyes. He knew something was wrong. He could feel it in the air, but he couldn't name it. My heart ached for him. 18 years old, married to a monster, about to watch his whole world collapse. Dinner was excruciating. Vivian chattered about recipes and home decor while I pushed food around my plate. Nadine's jaw was clenched so tight I worried she'd crack a tooth. Bradley kept glancing between all of us, confusion and fear warring on his young face. Finally, the plates were cleared, and Vivian produced a leather folder. I had my lawyer draw these up, she said, sliding papers across the table. Standard power of attorney. It just means I can help manage things if you're too ill. Nothing scary. She placed a pen beside the documents. Just sign here, and here, and here. Her finger traced the signature lines. Then you won't have to worry about anything ever again. I picked up the pen. My hand trembled, partly for show, partly genuine. I held the pen over the first signature line, and then I set it down. Before I sign, I said quietly, I have a question about my necklace. The tiniest flicker crossed Vivian's face, so fast I almost missed it. Your necklace! I reached into my purse and pulled out the evidence bag. The silver pendant gleamed through the plastic, beautiful and deadly. I set it on the table between us. I had this tested Vivian. Silence. Complete, crushing silence. Thallium sulfate. I kept my voice steady. In a hidden compartment. 6 months of slow poisoning. The color drained from Vivian's face like water down a drain. Bradley straightened in his chair. Mom, what are you talking about? I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes locked on Vivian. "You convinced my son to give me a necklace designed to kill me. You've been murdering me for 6 months, slowly, carefully, so it would look like natural illness, so no one would ever suspect." "Sierra," Vivian's voice was higher now, strained. "You're confused. You've been so sick. The stress. The doctors couldn't find anything because they weren't looking for poison." I pulled the lab report from my purse and laid it on the table. "Purchase records trace back to your email, your college email, Vivian. Vivian P2019. Her eyes darted toward the door. "And Gilbert? Your financial advisor who was going to help me invest my money." I smiled grimly. "He's your college boyfriend. The FBI has been investigating him for 18 months, and he flipped on you 3 days ago." That broke her. "That's a lie." Her voice cracked. He would never. He gave them everything. The plan, the money trail, all of it. He's facing 20 years for fraud alone. Adding conspiracy to commit murder would mean life. He wasn't going down alone. Patricia stood up from her corner, her hand moving toward the badge in her purse. "Vivian Prescott, you're under arrest for attempted murder in the 1st degree." For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Vivian lunged, not toward me or ran toward the back door. She shoved past Bradley, knocking him into the wall, and sprinted for the kitchen exit. She made it 3 steps before 2 officers came through the back door. She spun toward the front. 2 more officers. There was nowhere to go. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists, and something in Vivian snapped. The mask didn't just slip. It shattered completely. "You were supposed to die," she screamed at me, thrashing against the officers holding her. "You were supposed to just die quietly. It would have been so easy. Why couldn't you just—" "That's enough." Monica Reyes stepped through the front door, her badge catching the light. "Get her out of here." They dragged Vivian toward the door. She was still screaming about lawyers, about frame-ups, about how I'd ruined everything. Her carefully styled hair had come loose, her perfect makeup smeared with tears of rage. "You know what, Nadine?" I murmured as we watched them wrestle her into the police car. "I've wanted to see her speechless for 2 years. Didn't think it would happen quite like this, but I'll take it." Nadine squeezed my hand but said nothing. In the kitchen doorway, Bradley stood frozen. He'd watched his wife confess to trying to murder his mother, watched her dragged away in handcuffs, watched everything he thought he knew turn to ash. "Mom," his voice broke, I never knew the necklace. I gave you that necklace. I went to him, took his face in my hands, the way I used to when he was small and crying over a scraped knee. "You didn't know, sweetheart. She fooled us both, but Listen to me. Bradley, look at me." I waited until his red-rimmed eyes met mine. "You were manipulated by someone who's very, very good at manipulation. She targeted you because you're young and trusting and good. None of this is your fault." He collapsed against me, sobbing like the child he still partly was. 18 years old. He should have been worrying about college applications and first apartments, not watching his wife get arrested for attempted murder. I held him in the ruins of the evening and let him cry. That same night, across town, Gilbert Stowe was pulled over by federal agents while trying to reach the airport. He had a one-way ticket to Costa Rica in his pocket and $300,000 in wire transfers pending on his laptop. He didn't resist. He knew it was over. On his computer, agents found emails with Vivian detailing every step of the plan. On his phone, photos of my financial documents that Vivian had photographed during her visits. A complete roadmap of exactly how they intended to steal my life savings after they'd stolen my life. Both of them were in custody before midnight. I slept that night for the first time in 6 months without a single nightmare. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Vivian's lawyers tried everything. They claimed the evidence was planted. They claimed I was mentally unstable. They claimed Gilbert had acted alone and manipulated their innocent client. The jury didn't buy a word of it. The emails were too detailed, the purchase records too clear. And when the prosecution played the recording from my wire, Vivian screaming, "You were supposed to die," the jury's faces told me everything I needed to know. Guilty. Attempted murder in the 1st degree. Conspiracy to commit murder. Fraud. 25 years to life. No possibility of parole for 20 years. Vivian showed no emotion when the verdict was read. She just stared at me across the courtroom with cold, empty eyes. I stared right back. Gilbert took a plea deal in exchange for his testimony. 18 years federal prison for conspiracy and fraud. He cried during his sentencing hearing. Vivian didn't even glance his way. I thought about what 25 years meant. Vivian was 27 now. She'd be at least 47 before she could even apply for parole. Probably older. Her youth, her beauty, her plans, all of it rotting away in a cell. Some might call that karma. I call it justice. Within 2 weeks of taking off that necklace for good, my nausea stopped completely. Within a month, I noticed new hair growing in, soft and fuzzy like a baby's, filling in the patches where it had fallen out. Within 3 months, I'd gained back the weight, and the color had returned to my cheeks. My doctor called it remarkable. Whatever was wrong, your body has completely recovered. I just smiled and said, I got rid of some poison in my life. The necklace itself went to a forensic science program at a local university. Let it teach future investigators what evil looks like when it's wrapped in silver and given with a smile. Bradley filed for divorce while Vivian was awaiting trial. It was finalized before she was sentenced. He didn't contest anything, just wanted his name separated from hers as quickly as possible. He moved back home for a while. Needed his mom, he said. Needed to remember what real family felt like. Slowly, day by day, I watched my son come back to me, the boy who used to call 3 times a day with questions about laundry and cheese, the boy who told me everything. He started therapy. He's still going, 18 years old, and he's already learned that love can be a weapon, that trust can be exploited, that not everyone who smiles at you has your best interests at heart. Hard lessons, but he's learning them. And me, I made things right with Nadine. Every Sunday now, dinner at her place or mine. No exceptions. She never says, I told you so. She doesn't have to. Our new inside joke, trust your sister, especially about jewelry. It's a Tuesday afternoon, 6 months after the sentencing. I'm in my garden, planting new roses. The sun is warm on my back, and my hands are steady, strong. Nadine comes through the back gate with 2 glasses of iced tea. She settles into the chair beside me and watches me work the soil. You know what I keep thinking about? I say, patting dirt around a new rose bush. What? Clement, that old watchmaker. If I hadn't walked into his shop that day, I don't finish the sentence. I don't have to. Nadine reaches over and squeezes my hand. But you did, she says. That's what matters. I look at my garden. The flowers Patrick and I planted together 20 years ago. The new ones I'm adding now. Life isn't perfect. It never was. My husband is gone. My son is healing from wounds that will leave scars. I spent 6 months being slowly murdered by someone I'd welcomed into my family. But I'm still here. Every breath, every morning, every moment. Some lessons we learn gently. Others nearly kill us. Trust the people who love you enough to tell you hard truths. Pay attention when something feels wrong, even if you can't explain why. And remember, always remember, that sometimes the most dangerous poison comes wrapped in the prettiest package. Thank you so much for watching. More of my most interesting stories are already on your screen. Click left or right now and don't miss the best part. You will absolutely love it. See you in the next story.